Uh-oh. It looks like Curry's got some company. Here's a look at the brand new McFarlane Toys Superpowers Black Manta. Considered one of Aquaman's greatest enemies, Black Manta has a singular hatred for the King of Atlantis. Black Manta has always inflicted a special kind of pain upon his archenemy, cementing his reputation as one of the most ruthless and driven criminals in DC history. And just before we get the measurements for Manta, I'd like to first thank another M, the folks over at McFarlane Toys, that did provide the sample of the Black Manta, as well as all the other figures we've looked at lately here on this channel, promoting the brand new Superpowers line of figures that we've been getting. Now, of course, I think this is marking the fourth figure, having already looked at first Batman, then we looked at Robin, then we looked at Aquaman. Yeah, Black Manta is number 4. And by no means does that make Black Manta my fourth favorite figure. In fact, if I was to do it in my favorite figures, I probably would have Black Manta and then I would probably have Batman, or probably between those two. They'd be sharing first place. Either way, though, let's grab the tape measure. I've been talking already too much. The figure in this case, I don't know if you would count really the tubes on the back of his body. I'm not gonna include those. I'm only gonna go right to the very top of his dome. With his head included, the figure's gonna be about, I would say, 4¼ inches in height, or the figure's going to be about 11 centimeters tall. For the very obvious comparisons, here's what Black Manta looks like along with Aquaman. And still, Aquaman, a pretty big figure when you look at the two. I'm not even just counting the fact that Black Manta with his helmet on, he still seems shorter than Aquaman, but even if you look at the builds of the bodies as well, Black Manta isn't anywhere near as big and buff as Aquaman is. Other comparisons, of course, for the earlier at least looked at figures from this wave. Here's what he also looks like with Batman. Clearly, for me at least, Batman and Black Manta will be sharing first place. My favorite figures from this line. We can also bring in Robin, who, unfortunately, by just virtue of that, isn't going to be making first place, but still was a nice-looking Robin. And seeing as we are looking at a criminal after all, let's bring in a couple of other bad guys. Here's what Black Manta looks like along with the Batman Who Laughs, also from the Superpowers line. And here's also what it looks like with Deathstroke. You know, it also is a reminder to me, too, the fact that we're looking at a bad guy in this wave, I think is only one of the 5 figures is an actual bad guy. But then it also reminds me, looking at the Batman Who Laughs and Deathstroke, what little way we've gotten in the way of villains. We've got to definitely get some more villains going on here. I'm surprised, actually, that we've yet to get ourselves a Joker or a Harley Quinn. Those figures would be sitting really high for me. And even just to look at Batman and Robin, how many rogues galleries, how many members of Batman's rogues galleries could be ideal candidates for future Superpowers figures? I really hope we get a chance to see more villains coming out in some future waves from this line. But we're not going to hog the spotlight from this particular bad guy, one of my favorite bad guys of all the DC universe. Black Manta, unfortunately, once again, does not come included with any accessories. I still think this could have been a chance, an opportunity to include something, a ray gun, or maybe a harpoon gun, something with the figure. But even if just to pick the figure up and look at him, he doesn't even have a gripping means anyways in either one of his hands to actually hold an accessory, even if he had one. One thing I really like about this figure right away is that they didn't sacrifice anything from the sizing of his helmet. Black Manta, the charm about this character is the fact he always has an oversized helmet. And it's nicely been done here, as it would have been done the case if this was a figure that existed, say, in the 80s, with what we were getting with the original Kenner. Now, I have looked up. There are a few unproduced Kenner figures. I still don't think Black Manta was one of them. So this was one of those characters that just never saw the light of day as ever a Kenner Superpowers figure. And I really think it was a missed opportunity. First of all, the fact that the line as a whole, there really wasn't a lot of bad guys to be added in that line anyways. But then to omit a character as cool as Black Manta, this guy for me resonates something that would work really well for a retro figure. The thing I really like about it, obviously, as already mentioned, is the fact that he does have this large helmet, but also the fact that the helmet is a different color than the rest of his costume. I do have this little shininess for some strange reason on the top of the dome. I've wiped off what I thought was enough of it, but now that I'm seeing it actually through the camera, you maybe can even see, like, there's a little bit of almost like a, I don't want to say like a grease, but there was a shininess I noticed right away when I took the figure out of the packaging. You might probably even be able to see it with the light hitting it certain ways. Really like the way that they've outlined dark and black here, the yellow eyes that he has on the front of his face. And of course, like usually the case with Black Manta, he has usually running hoses that go from the top of his helmet all the way to the back of the figure's body. The hoses, I feel, are long enough that you don't have to worry necessarily if you turn the head too much. Now, obviously, that still being said, you don't want to turn it too far because, of course, that's going to start to pull and tug this. But I think there's just enough that you can easily, comfortably at least, rotate the head back and forth without feeling like you're going to be pulling those hoses. Of course, when it goes to the rest of the figure's body, he does have what would almost, at a moment's moment, look actually like he has all the same coloring. Sort of a dark navy here on the front. But then he has the kind of the colors that we talked a little bit about with Aquaman, that his arms aren't quite the same color shared for the torso. You probably can look at it that this one has clearly more of a darker navy color here, but he has a little bit lighter of a color here for his arms. I don't know if that's supposed to be intentional. I would imagine with the design of this particular version of Black Manta that he probably would have, or at least should have had the arms closer to this color and maybe not the color that we get instead. His legs are also something that isn't quite as dark as his torso. Again, so while you're looking at it, maybe there's not as much from a distance, but the more you closer look at the figure, you kind of realize that the colors of the plastic are a little off, again, for the arms and the lower legs. But that's a small, and please take that as a small criticism for an otherwise really cool looking figure. The thing also about this figure is he does have a few little, now I will only describe these as sort of like pockmarks. He's got like these little kind of impressions left behind on the plastic. Now I don't know if that's just the way it came out of the factory line, but you can kind of see there's a few little indentations there on the tops of the thighs. He doesn't seem to have it on this side. I only really noticed it on this side of the figure's body. So if you have this figure for yourself, let me know if you also have like these, I don't know, again, you can see them or not, these like little indentations, these tiny little dots that he's got on the sides of his leg. But other than that, he's a really nice looking Manta. He's got, of course, the peg holes on the undersides of his feet. So if you did want to use yourself, let's just say a display stand, just happen to have one here off to the side. Let's bring in a McFarlane DC Multiverse stand. And just to show you that they are using the same size diameter pegs. So if you wanted to have them a little more polished on your shelf, for example, you can just easily attach them onto the display stand. Or also, if you wanted to have them in a little more of a pose that wouldn't really be granted any other way than having the figure attached onto a display stand, you can also go that route as well. It kind of looks like Black Manta's walking instead. Actually, I have done that with a couple of my Superpowers figures. Instead of having them just in boring museum poses, there's a couple of them on my shelf right now. I sort of have, at the very least, just sort of in walking poses. It just brings a little bit more to the eye, especially when you're looking at them on the shelf. Might just do something similar to that with Black Manta here. Let's just take the stand off for right now and run through the figure's posability. Even though he does have the hoses attached, the head works the exact same way. It's not on a ball joint necessarily, but at least it allows you to swivel the head back and forth. Again, don't pull it too far, but at least I've got him facing sideways. And even then, the rope, the cord that he has on the back is only now starting to get tight. So you probably could even rotate it even further, but that's about where I would want to stop it. Just again, you don't want to rip these by accident. The arms do rotate all the way around, both sides. He has no waist articulation, but he does have at least the legs that move forward and back. And again, like all the other cases of the Superpowers figures, Black Manta also has a bend at the knees. Somewhat ironic calling this guy a Black Manta, even though he's mostly, majority-wise, he's mostly a blue figure. But man, do I ever love the look of this guy. Kind of reminds me of the days also of Challenge of the Super Friends, which again, right around that time frame as well that Kenner was popping out the Superpowers figures. And again, we can bring in the Aquaman figure that we've already had a look at. We can also bring in the Batman. Yeah, the Robin, I guess I should also bring in also as well, but in the meantime, though, here's some of my favorite figures that we've gotten from this wave. The only figure we still have yet to go through and have a look at is the more classic colored Diana Prince, or Wonder Woman. For some reason, again, we are getting this figure again, even though we already have gotten a Wonder Woman before. We're going to obviously talk about that in her own separate review. But what we've gotten, at least so far, my top two favorite figures are, well, top three are the ones that you're looking at right now. But of the top two, I think, honestly, Batman and Black Manta share first place. There's no way I would even consider the idea of actually moving either one of them down to the silver or to second place. They're too good of a figures, both of them at least, that they're going to be making my number one slot. Not only just for the figures that make up this wave, but of all the Superpowers figures, Black Manta and Batman here are some of my favorites, if not my favorites, the ones that McFarlane's team have done so far. With McFarlane now producing a Black Manta, it does, though, check one character off my box of characters I would love to have seen been produced by Superpowers and never got the chance. If, to go back and look at the original time that we got the first wave of Superpowers from McFarlane's team, if you had asked me then, what characters would you like to see for future waves? Pretty high, if not at the very top of that list, would have been Black Manta, along with some other characters that I could think of right away, like a Clayface. I'm just thinking to myself, and I'm probably going to be running through several of Batman's rogues, just chalk up the fact I love Batman so much, but like some of Batman's rogues, like Clayface, like Man-Bat. And I think Man-Bat was going to be a produced superpowers figure at one point, and never got produced. But it's strange that Man-Bat would have got the choice over a character like Black Manta. You look at a character like this from head to toe, and not to mention his oversized head. This guy just screams a retro Kenner superpowers. And even though Kenner dropped the ball by not producing a character like Manta as a superpowers, McFarlane at least picks up the spare, and we get one now as a newer superpowers, which does really retain all the look that the original superpowers would have had. It just unfortunately forfeits the gimmick that went along with it. And just to look at this, it probably would have been the case if this guy did exist in the 80s. He probably would have had a very similar gimmick, I would imagine, to Aquaman, where it was probably the case where he would have just squeezed his arms and he would have flipped his feet back and forth like he was swimming in the water. But what do you guys think of Black Manta? Let me know down below in the comment section. And even a bigger question to maybe ask you guys, if you had the chance to choose, say, the next wave of superpowers characters, what characters would you like to see in a future wave? Now that we have Manta, I would personally like to see Clayface. I'd like to see Joker. I'd like to see Harley Quinn. I'm sure I'd have to throw in a couple of heroes in there also as well. But those are the figures for me that I would like to see McFarlane's team approach for a future superpowers line. But what's yours? Let me know down below in the comment section. And though going back a bit, I'd like to thank the folks once again over at McFarlane Toys that did provide the sample, yes, of the brand new Superpowers Black Manta. A little hard to read, I'm sure I was, over the course of this review, but a figure that I really like as part of this line. If you guys enjoyed this video, want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, we are, though, by the way, one figure left to still go through, and that's a more classic-looking Wonder Woman. Of course, we will be bringing back that original Wonder Woman for comparisons. But yeah, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, that you're also turning on the bell notification, and come back, as we will be looking at the Wonder Woman, we will be looking at the Batmobile, and we will be looking at Wonder Woman's invisible jet. Of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.